So welcome everyone. Today is October the 12th, Thanksgiving in Canada. So happy Thanksgiving. Thankful that you're here. As you're coming in, if you can keep your mic muted and your video off, it makes for a better recording. We are recording today's show, so you can have access to it later. If you could put your questions in the chat box in capital letters, it just brings it to my attention. So what I learned from Christopher's video is that capitals mean something. Oh, hi Norm, nice to see you. If you could turn your video and your mic off, that would be great. We're just recording.
Okay.
So can you turn your video off too? That would be great. Thank you. Okay, good. So if you could put your questions or comments in capital letters, what I was saying is that I learned from Christopher's video that when you capitalize something, it means you're going to take advantage of. So I'm going to take advantage of your questions, and it'll be for my disadvantage. I'd like to say aging eyesight, but instead I'll say my transiting Saturn's coming close to my moon and restricting my vision. So feel free to talk amongst yourself in the chat box, but if there's something, really that you want me to see to stand out, if you could capitalize it, that would be great. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for Christopher James, who's taking his Thanksgiving Monday to be with us too. I don't know, maybe that's an omen, right? We're Thanksgiving today. Christopher, I first seen you on your Earth United video. It was Linda, who is our education coordinator, who sent me a video with Jesse Casanova, and I thought it was brilliant. And then since then, Bobby and a few of the other members have sent me videos, and I've watched the ones that you've sent. So I think you have a lot of great information to offer, and I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
I'm just going to give a little introduction for somebody who might be seeing this video for the first time. Dina Churchill, and I'm the convener for the Atlantic Common Law Assembly that was established on September the 18th. We have 28 members that signed the charter and 8 in proxy. I'm also a retired chiropractor of 22 years, and that's where my interest in common law started, because my voice was squashed as the health department tried to cover up important truths about vaccine injury that I was seeing in my practice. And then the media sort of jumped on that bandwagon and, really, what should I say, dragged my name through the media for a couple of years with that. So it was there I could see, the cover up, the corruption, and also then the mouthpiece for that, which was mainstream media. So I started researching common law, and that's how I got interested. Now, Christopher, you're a bit of a mystery man. When I was looking to find some information to sort of share with our listeners, what I found was that you were a family man born in Burlington, Ontario in 1966.
Yep. And
that there was some wrong against your family that got you interested in common law. So maybe you might share a little bit of that with us. But your history was in music and entertainment. So maybe we could start, and you could just talk a little bit about yourself and what brought you into common law.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Dina, for inviting me to come on here and speak with everyone this evening. Can you hear me okay? Is the level all right?
Perfect. Yeah.
Good. Terrific. Sometimes I forget being a sound guy. That's what I went to school for. I have this little, basic setup now from a recording studio with a little tower and a mic. And sometimes I forget, I move the mic out of the way and it's over there, and I'm talking in an interview. They're going, your level's awfully low. And sometimes the mic's over there. So I'm off to a good start this evening. Anyways, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here this evening, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We do have a great deal to be thankful for in this world, especially in this moment in time. I do believe we're all here for a very specific reason right here now in this moment in this world, because there is so much corruption that's going on around us that the light is finally percolating up to the top. So in tying into what Dina was saying there, my background, it started out in the music and entertainment industry. I was in college at 17, out at 19, worked as a recording engineer. Then I got into general contracting, and that was only supposed to be for a couple of years because I got to a point where I could work anywhere in the world in the studios, and I wanted to open up my own world-class facility and bring in my own clients in a really unique location. So I went into renovations for a little bit, not knowing how to swing a hammer, to raise some money for that. And then what wound up only supposed to be, 2 to 5 years, it wound up being a 20-year career, because then the internet came online. This was all happening in like 1986 or 7, I guess, once I got out of school or whatever. It would have been actually the early 90s when I went into contracting. And by 95, that's why it keyed up. 5 years into my, my target date or whatever, all of a sudden the internet came online. Well, that was a game changer I saw with the music and entertainment industry. So from there, I started to work towards a global initiative. It was a $1.5 billion initiative launching in 10 countries at once. And it was through that journey that came to this first evil, I guess you could say, I came face to face with, so to speak. I didn't know much about financing. I was strictly a music guy. So my entire focus, my whole life was music and creating, writing, and recording. So when I found out how the creation of money was, which was one of the first things people should also learn about, it really rocked my world. I couldn't believe that this was actually happening. And then when I started, after that, what happened was shortly after that, maybe about a year or so after, I realized that my life's work, that was ultimately this launch in all these countries, was never going to come to fruition. Not because it wasn't an incredible initiative, but was because of this evil that I knew that would never allow this to make its way to the light. And that's exactly what started to happen. And I knew nothing about common law back, and then that's ultimately what started me on this journey down the road, because after my life's work was completely destroyed, I then got into commercial lending, and that's where I saw an enormous amount of fraud. And then I started working in a unique way with RCMP, OPP, and local municipal police. So what happened after that was, after I started working with them, I got involved in all this fraud. And then I started to realize there's something really wrong in the system. There was an enormous amount of elderly people around me that were getting wronged and harmed. And once I started learning about that, it was about by 2010, and then my father came to me. And that's where this wrong and harm also began. Is that, I should have mentioned as well, is that the guy I went to for financing to pull this initiative initially together to create my home studio wound up being a massive crook in Canada here. And that's what destroyed me and my family initially. I had perfect credit rating. They put their house on the line and everything to put the initial, I guess you could say, retainer down for them to go and raise, I think it was 10 million for the first part of this first phase of this venture that I was doing. This guy wound up being a crook. I lost everything that I had. Like I said, everything was a perfect credit score up to that point. And so that was the first trespass. So when that happened with my initiative with work, I was trying to still get it to launch, which Microsoft and Cisco partnered with immediately. And then I got into this financial lending because I realized I had to have some money to at least try and support myself and help my family. And it was a real nightmare. And so it was through that wrong and harm that happened there that ultimately why I'm before you here today, because just after that, then my father, after I said I got involved with the local municipal police and federal and provincial level in various cases, not for me, but bringing cases to them and them actually coming to me because a lot of massive fraud was being worked through commercial loans and stuff. And so when that happened, then my father came to me in 2010. He said, "Christopher, I got a letter here from, saying that they found this surplus and, there's thousands of dollars that are there for my retirement, which I never knew existed." And to give you a long and short of it is my father worked for 41 years for the Fuller Brush company. And when it basically closed shop in 1992, he was left with a pension of $3,600 a year. Okay, not a month, a year. So you can imagine how hard that is for somebody. And we don't come from money either. Let everyone know this now. I'm a totally transparent guy. Everything that's happened to us in our life, getting to this point, like I said, I've been fighting a fight for a long time here. And when my truth comes out down the road, hopefully people can see the story. It is fascinating, but that's not why I'm here tonight, because we have something that's much more bigger that through this journey I've gone through has led to this truth. So when my father brought to me this note from 2010, he says, "Chris, they're looking to give me, several thousands of dollars here, which he had never had before." And by that time, by 2010, there was only a handful of pensioners that were left. Originally about 200 people, I think, between plant, front end office. By the time my dad got this notice, what they knew of was around 50 people or so that were still alive. So it was a horrific thing, all this money that was owed to them. So he told me about this in 2010 or 2006. But then he came to me in 2010. He said, "Christopher," he said, "they're not paying this out to us. There's only a couple of people they haven't been able to track down. And then they said they'll sign it out, but they've been dragging this out for 4 years. Can you please look at this for me?" So I started looking at it. Immediately started drilling down, and I went and did an FOI, which is a freedom of information, request. And when you do that it involved FSCO, which is the Financial Services Commission of Ontario, it allowed me, they were really naive at that time, I guess, to all this, because many people didn't do that. Again, this came from my background, I got into commercial lending. So when you're commercial lending, you have to be very attentive to details, and you start to learn where all the real records are to really check out something. So I did an FOI to get the actual records that the corporation that had bought the Fuller Brush company out, which was Sarah Lee, and brought it up and thought, well, I'll take a look at everything that's in there. Well, sure enough, and very shortly after that, Dina, I found that these funds were owed directly to my father, and that the company had no right or title into them. See, what they did is they wrote to them in 2006 and they said, hey guys, we found all this money here, $1.6 million, and we're all proposing, because, well, you know, there's really no paperwork to support how we're supposed to address this honorably, because we have a trust with you, right? So what we've proposed is a 50-50 sharing agreement. Everybody's going to get 50-50. The corporation gets 50% of what's owed to you, and you get the other 50%. How does that sound? Well, I'll tell you, the pensioners were ecstatic, right? They're all looking at, like, a lot of these pensioners never were able to take their husband or wife for a vacation, Dina. That's how poor they were. And that's why it mattered so much to them. It was their life's work, and they never had anything like this. So you can imagine what that meant to them. Having this carrot dangled in front of them for 4 years now on top was terrorism, not getting this money given to them. So as soon as I got involved and I got this FOI, I drilled right down on the records, and what did I find? That the money was owned exclusively to the pensioners. The company could have no right or title to it, which meant Sarah Lee had been causing all this wrong and harm and fraud for many years, right? They were supposed to pay this out in 1992. And then I find out that the fund was worth $17.5 million in 2009, right? Or pardon me, in 1998. And by 2006, 7 years later, it would dwindle down to 1.6 million. Where did that money go? Right? So I hit something really big here that was going on. So when I took it to a lawyer of 41 years, you know, one of the top 500 lawyers in Canada, Ontario, Jeffrey Adair, he looked at this, he said, you got to be crazy, Chris, you've missed something. The reason I'm just telling everybody this too, it's important you hear it. It's important that you understand where the foundation of when a man is saying that he's speaking truth is coming from. So you have to know that my truth is based on experience, okay, as well as research and knowledge, but it's mainly based on firsthand experience. I've gone through enormous trials in a very short time that I've stayed the course on, and through staying with that and trying to find out what is going on here, why is all this wrong and harm happening, I came to this truth. So I've just got a couple more minutes here just to talk about this, and then we can get into why I'm really here. But back to my father. So when I found this out and I brought this to the attention of the attorney, he looked at, he said he thought I was crazy. I brought him my completed work. Remember, I did the FOI. I went through all the records. I handed it to him. I said, there it is right there, Jeff. That one line in the trust agreement that the company shall have no rights or any ownership of this fund now or in the future. As soon as he looked at it, he was, oh, he didn't really pay attention to it. But as soon as I got back on the GO train from Burlington to Toronto, I didn't so much as get my seat in the chair, and he's calling me. He's going, oh my God. He says, this is the worst case, Chris, he says, I've ever seen in being a lawyer. He says, this is horrific what's gone on here. So what followed after that, there was $240 million in two civil class action suits that were launched, $120 million each for the plant workers and also for the front end staff workers. So there was two court cases that Jeff Adair had filed for them. Well, the long and the short of it is, at the end of the day, Jeff Adair, what he did was absolutely horrific to me. He threw me under a bus. My father got murdered before they actually went to trial the first time. And then Jeff Adair walked everybody back in after he already got in writing for the Plan 1 pensioners that they caved. 6 months earlier, they caved. They basically admitted, yep, it's their money. Right? So what I meant, that $240 million would have been going, and these people, if you knew the back end story, it was horrific. That's why I'm ultimately here too, because of this horrific wrong. It's not just happened to my family, it's happened to everybody. And then when I learned this truth of this horrific trespass that happens when we're born, my God, that shows that it's happened to all of us, that all of us have been lied to. So again, once my father brought this to me and we corrected this, unfortunately, he was murdered during my course of trying to get this justice done. And I made a promise to him on his deathbed. So I've continued on with that. And through that process, that's when I really delved into the common law. I started to learn, what is really this law that's going on here? And then I learned through my travels and my journeys in about 10 years, exactly what is going on and the solution simply now moving forward for everybody. And I want everyone to know here that I love everybody here to death. The work that you're all doing, stepping up, creating these assemblies, you're having a conversation. This conversation that we're having here tonight is a conversation that should have happened with your mother and father to you and their parents to them as well. But it's never happened. Not because your parents didn't care, or they were ignorant, or they were stupid. It's because they were never told a foundational truth intentionally. And when you learn this truth, it is so huge and so simple. You're now going to see the light shone on all this corruption that's going on right now with Justin Trudeau and every man and woman that's acting as premier right across this country. It's very simple to understand, especially for Dina, what she went through with her private practice, that what she was doing and all her heart helping people. Okay, she never caused any wrong to anybody, and yet look what they did to Dina. Okay, and they've used this foundational truth against Dina, and Dina didn't know it, just like nobody knows it when we're walking into our public courthouses. But now that we've got this truth, it's absolutely huge. And I'm going to be able to share it with everybody literally in 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to grab a drink here. My mouth is really dry, but I just want you to know that my 20 years of research and work that I've been at this, okay, to bring this truth forward, that was originally to right a horrific wrong for my mother and father and family, I wound up realizing that this is going to affect our entire world like never before. So as a result of that, that's why I'm here tonight, to bring you a mission of love, of light, and it's that simple. I stand in truth in everything that I'm saying to you because all of us have this evidence. And once you understand the simplicity of what I'm saying, those courthouses, boy, that's when we're really going to assemble. Okay, you're going to see people breaking through like I'm doing right now with a court case that got filed on September the 12th. Okay, this is where the rubber hits the road to everybody listening to what I'm saying. I'm a man who speaks the, walks the walk and talks the talk. And this claim that went on the 12th is the key for our country and for our world. And it comes down to one question. Are you ready for this? 20 years of all my work, and it comes down to one question that the masses have to learn right now, every man and woman know in their heart, mind, and soul. And it's simply this: do the rules of civil procedure apply to we the people, a man or a woman? Now, just a second. Just so you're aware, in law, okay, the word law stands for 3 jurisdictions: land, air, and water. Okay, water is the sea. L stands for common law. That's the unwritten law that we came from our creator. We all know the difference between right and wrong, and we all know that we do not trespass against another man or woman. There's 3 core words you have to master and learn, and they're simple: trespass, property, and who. So no one ever trespasses. We know that. We don't trespass against our fellow man, and we don't administrate what? There's the second word: property without right. It's that simple. So what's going on here? Why did Chris start off saying it's only one question, saying the rules of civil procedure? What is happening at our public courthouses is that we, the people, for the last 100 years have been blocked access to them correctly. Why? Because they are applying the rules of civil procedure to us. We are not accessing our public courthouse, and that's a very important word you understand. They are public, our provincial courthouses and our federal courthouses. They are public buildings. Ask any of the staff that's working in that's acting in a public servant capacity. You're going to say, absolutely, this is a public building. That's right. And who's the man or woman in this public building that can deny either right to seek the administration of justice? Well, nobody. Right? The only way that could happen is if, here comes that word again, if I'm property of that man or woman, or I've signed some sort of a contract, right? Everybody can understand that. Simple terms, but foundationally powerful and truthful. Okay, and this is what's going on, because when we've been going to the courthouses, those of us that are trying to move a claim, the common law is as simple as this: that Bob or Susie over here, one of them trespassed against me, or both of them. This is the wrong and harm that they caused me. When you come into that courthouse, you are bringing the law in. That's why it's called common law, because I bet you every single man and woman that's on this call here tonight, you all know the difference between right and wrong. It's very simple to understand. And if I presented in front of you that Bob or Susie over here, this is the trespass that they committed against me, this is the wrong and harm that occurred, and this is my claim to be made whole again. For example, say they smashed up my car, came into my house and damaged my property or whatever, and say it was $1 million, and then it took another, few weeks or a month or whatever with interest to bring them into court, whatever, right? The first duty of that jury is going to make that man or woman whole. And then the jury decides, not the man or woman who's bringing that claim into the court, who's moving their own court. That's the other thing you need to understand. When you see this filing that I put in on September the 12th, it says you can go to my website, awarriorcalls.com. Once you've subscribed, please subscribe. It's very important. The reason you're subscribing is that they're eventually going to pull the internet down here. It's coming. Okay, or they're at least going to kick me off YouTube for this truth that I'm bringing forward, as they've done to so many other people I've been watching. Why you subscribe is that that's going to allow all of you to have direct contact still fluidly with me through this new software application, and also through my website, through email, when I'm going to be at least uploading new live streams to my website or on BitChute. So that's why the subscription is very important. We're not selling anything here. So at the end of the day, why this truth is so powerful is that when you bring this into the public courthouse, the jury of your peers is going to render a decision, and then they're going to look at that man or woman and say, was that man or woman wronged or harmed emotionally, physically? Because then that surrounds a punitive award. And that's how simple the common law is. The common law is what we bring in to our public courthouse. And it's a claim that there's a man or woman out here that's caused us wrong or harm in some capacity. And that is what's represented on the paperwork. Okay, it is that simple. They file it, they take it. You do not use any legal forms. You do not use any legal terminology. You never use affidavits. You always use like a statement of truth. And that's why when you download on my website, once you're inside, sorry, I didn't finish that. Once you subscribe, go and enter the site, and then under the case file common law tab, you're going to see there's 3 case files. The second case file is the Sukleski court. Okay, that's that which was filed on September the 12th of this year. Download that, please, and read it. You only, even though it's 61 pages, you only have to read the first page. The first page says it all right in the claim. It's a notice to everyone in the courtroom that says the rules that work in a public servant capacity. Because remember, here's another really important nugget you're going to learn here quickly. Every man and woman, when you act in any type of a capacity, you have no rights. People go, what? Let me finish. You have duties and obligations. When a man or woman acts as a policeman, a court clerk, a judge, a staff, whatever capacity, a doctor, a nurse, they have duties and obligations that they're supposed to be committing or carrying out underneath their job description because they're acting in a role. They don't have rights like a man or a woman. Remember that. Only a man or woman has rights, and a man or woman's rights trumps duties and obligations every single time. And once you understand the power of what I've just said there, and I'm glad that you're recording this so that you can go back and listen to these very important truths, when you communicate that properly on paper and honorably, and also speak it from your heart and from your mind and your soul in front of these people that are at the courthouses, that is what establishes jurisdiction control. See, when you go to that public courthouse, it's your place to assemble your fellow man when someone is trespassed against you causing wrong or harm. Or even if we have a duty, as I do, as I'm still representing here, is I've got my fellow man here who's being trespassed against, okay? His estate's being destroyed. It was his father died without a will. And that's how simple this all is. It does not matter what the case is evolving in this world, because why? Legal doesn't apply to a man or woman. Legal applies to only that which is incorporated. Remember that, write that down. Lawful applies to a man, woman, or people, not the word person. So every time you see the word person, remember that does not represent, it could, but 9 times out of 10, it does not. It does not represent a man or woman and how it's being written. And in the legal world, that's where they created a legal person. And you say, well, when did they create a legal person, Chris? I didn't know they were creating legal persons. I thought I've been going around all this time in my life acting as a man or a woman. Well, here's the evidence. The birth certificate. When you're given that a few weeks after we are born in a hospital, that is evidence of identity theft that goes on when we're born. And they take our given name to us, and they go from actually it's the statement of birth, which is, the statement of birth, which is shown on my site. It's the long form document here. This is the actual hospital record in the center when I was born. From this document, they take an extract, and then a birth certificate's gone and created. Now, remember, he who creates owns. All you need to know about this birth certificate, there's a lot of information around it, but I keep things simple. Did you create it? No. Remember that. You didn't create this piece of plastic. All right. So if you didn't create it, it has no jurisdiction, meaning control over you. It doesn't mean anything to you other than this was given to you at a time when you had recently come into this world. And what actually is properly represented on it is it says birth. You don't want to be birthed. You want to be born. But there's a birth date, and then there's a registration date. And the birth date, well, that's the date when we are birthed in hospital. It's actually a shipping term. Remember how we're getting back to the word, what law stands for? Land, air, water, law of the sea. Lawyers are trained in admiralty, maritime law. That's the law of the sea. That's why it's called citizenship. Okay, see, there's an underlying very dark secret world that's going on there, but we don't have to go down that road. I could play with that all day long in the word game that they've got going on, how they've hidden many things from the people. But what it boils down to, ultimately, when truth is present, very few words are required. So this document that you have right here that you were given a few weeks, your parents were given when you were born, called the birth certificate, it's actually evidence of identity theft. Imagine if McDonald's, when you were born, they went and created a corporation in your name. And then they sent you a document, a cute little document with their McDonald's logo saying, here's your birth date, here's the registration date. When we registered you with McDonald's, we created a corporation in your name. And guess what, Christopher? You're going to be bound to it for the rest of your life. We're going to send you taxation bills, and we're going to do all these wonderful things. And anyone that's part of our creation, oh, they're bound to, ready for this? They're bound to receive vaccinations. They're bound to codes, rules, statutes, and regulations. See, now you're starting to hopefully understand that the world of codes, rules, statutes, bylaws, that only applies to a legal fiction, all right, a person. And remember, he who creates control. So back to it again. Did you or I create this? Nope. Some people did it, some service corporation, and that's what the government of Ontario is. That's what the government of New Brunswick is. Get that in your heads really powerfully, because when you understand that, Wow, is that a game changer? You look at these people for what they truly are acting as. They're acting in a role for a service corporation, no different than McDonald's or Tim Hortons. Can McDonald's or Tim Hortons come into your house and force vaccinate you? No. So when you get into any of these trespasses that are occurring against us now, it's going to be very powerful because of this claim that's now lying in this courthouse. What they're going to do is they are going to try and kick this out. They've already attempted it. 3 lawyers have written to the registrar. That's the woman that works at the courthouse that oversees all the filings that come in. You must understand that a public courthouse, these are the key words, it's a public courthouse. That's where we, the people, go when we have a trespass of wrong or harm that's occurred against us. It's that simple. You never use their legal forms. And then once you get in there, there is no man or woman within that courthouse that has any right to prevent you from seeking the administration of justice. They have a duty to every man and woman to move your process forward and seat a jury of our peers. So you want a trial by jury. You don't want a trial jury. What's the difference? Well, a trial jury puts the man, these people that wear the black robes, he's in control of that jury, of that courtroom. But if it's a trial by jury, okay, it's not. Okay, so it's very important that you understand this. That's why it's a court of record moving under the court of law, trial by jury, and not a jury by, or pardon me, jury by trial. In my filing, when you read that, that's what that's referring to, is that the magistrate is actually been separated. He's there bearing witness. That's why we want these people wearing the robes. They're paid enough money for crying out loud what we're doing. That's why they're there. They're supposed to bear witness that a man or woman has come forward. Why? Because our court system operates in a duality. See, these are all the things you were never taught. And when you understand the simplicity, the reason that we have all this corruption going on in this world is because we, the people, are simply, we've not been shown this truth and we're not accessing our public courthouse correctly. See, a courthouse operates in 2 realms. There's the legal world. Yes, the legal world. The legal world is the world of the dead. That's this, right? It's a corporation. It's all corporation work. That's why when you go look at anyone who's put a legal filing into the courthouses in the last 100 years, just look at the top at who the parties are involved in. They'll call them plaintiffs or respondents or whatever, anything but a man or a woman. And you're always going to see that at the least worst case, that it's just going to have the last name all capitalized, okay? Because that's what they grabbed onto when you're born. That's what they use in all their back-end system. But you don't need to go into that realm. You just simply need to know that what they're using there with that all capital name, those people are referring to this. That's what's created, and that's what those crown courts, that's what legal proceedings have jurisdiction over, is this. And when you walk into a court, they play a trick word on you. They say, "Are you?" and then they read out your name. Even though your name's in all capital letters on that legal filing court document, you go, "Yes, I am Christopher James," or whatever, right? Well, then they got you, because they've cloaked you as this person that was created, and now you're supposed to be there representing as the surety, because you've admitted that you're the correct party before them, and then that's when they apply all these rules, codes, statutes, orders, everything to you. When you understand...
Sorry, could you go back just for somebody who might be sort of looking at this for the first time? I really loved the video where you showed the birth certificate and then you showed the QSEP number on the back.
Yes.
And
yes.
Just because this really, for me, it identified, that we're entities, we're financial entities. So maybe you could just explain that, and it sets up the stage then to understand of how we've been frauded. And there was a question of also from the chat box around that same sort of idea. How could we take rightful ownership over a birth certificate? Is that the first step that we'd need to follow? So maybe, again, the QSEP number, and then explain that process, if you wouldn't mind, Chris.
Yep, I'll give the second question first because it's quick. Remember what I just said a second ago? Did you create this birth certificate? No. So why do you want to get control of it? It's got nothing to do with you. What you have to bring into the light is that it has nothing to do with you. And as soon as you cut that chain that has nothing to do with you, it's done. Okay? On my website, I teach people how to go and create their own correct ID using and drawing from this hospital record, which all these people bared witness to and put their signature on it. Remember, this is just a record. Nothing how it is written on this document or this document applies to me. You might want to look at I don't know if it says on the bottom of yours, Dina, but mine came laminated when I first got it. And right at the very bottom of this wallet size one, what does it say? Canadian banknote. Right? See, it's all right there in front of us, but we've never showed it. And God bless Dina bringing up the QSIP number. That's anything. When you go to my website, it tells you that any corporation or company that's created requires one to be bought or sold on the stock exchange. And this system was set up by the central bankers. How, isn't that interesting, right? But it's not just the central bankers. There's 3 heads to this snake. The first head is the Pope. The second one's the Queen, the monarch. And then the third one is the central bankers. They, a very long time ago in 1302, it's called the Papal Bulls. You look it up. The Pope claimed all souls, right? He claimed them all in this world. And this is by way of the system and how they have to figure out how to control everybody. See, because the minute that something is capitalized, we'll go back to that word that I love. Dina put that little play on words. They're going to capitalize on me. When your name is capitalized, it diminishes your capacity in law as a man or woman. You're now not seen as a man or woman. See, it's known as dog Latin when you see your name in all capital letters, at the top, and then the rest of the body of a. That's why all these legal filings, they're all void because they're written in fraud to begin with, because they've got parties that, again, they're dealing in a legal world, and yet they've got a man or woman in front of them that they're trying to administrate over them as if they're property. And once fraud comes into the equation, it eviscerates all. So. Sorry, what was back to your first question again there, Dina, was the CUSET numbers. Why that is so powerful when you see on my site, as I said, that this was created by the central bankers. This is not conspiracy theory. So what have they done now? You further see in one of my short videos after I showed the back of my CUSET number is that you see that they brought out a new system now. I started to expose this 5 years ago in my first video when I came out into the light after 20 years keeping my nose down, because I knew that when I came out, I have a duty. Let me make this perfectly clear to everybody. I have a duty to make sure that every single thing that I'm saying to you here tonight is 100% correct. These are not opinions. These are facts. This is the truth that I'm bringing forward. And that simple truth that I touched on, that one question at the opening, the rules of civil procedure, that's the underlying pin to everything right now at this public courthouse. Why? Because it's going to reset all our public courthouses and it's going to undo all of this fraud, just like what happened to Dina. Dina, did your court case, did it go under the rules of civil procedure?
I didn't get to court. I surrendered. They exhausted my finances before that.
Well, like I said, they were still, all their processes and what they were doing, they're still bound by the rules of civil procedure, whether they get up into court or not. You'll see it in any other filings or communications. They have a process that they have to follow. So when you understand that this affects every single man and woman in this world that's ever been brought into these courthouses, from traffic court, right, from taxation. See, now you'll understand something. When you were born, imagine this, okay? It's the same thing that happened, but let's put it in perspective. You're born and McDonald's goes and creates ID and they give it to you, but they also have created in the back end a corporation in your name. And you're never told that that's a corporation that they created, which they own, okay? And they own Untitled. Legally, they own that name. They've copyrighted. That's what I mean. They've stolen your property without, how could you possibly know this when you're moments old lying as a baby in a hospital bed? How can you know this? See, this is what I mean. You have to be conscious in order to understand if there's a contract. And that's why we come into this world with no papers on us. We are all born free. That is powerful that you understand that, because what's happening right now in our world, God bless all my fellow men. Everyone is out there trying to find their way forward, trying to find the truth, trying to find a solution to stop all this evil and wrong that's happening against us on all these different capacities. And it is really as simple as knowing who you are. Because once you know who you are not and what was done to you when we are born, all of this other stuff stops around you. You establish the jurisdiction that nobody can stick a needle in you, that nobody can cause wrong or harm. And if a man like me has truth of massive fraud against us, because this is nothing more than a baby slave trade, that's also up on my website. You should download it. It's a historical, factual, drill down investigative work by Anna Von Reitz and her team out of the United States. And they show you that how we got to where we are today with this birth certificate, how this began 1,000 years ago. And they've had to change the system along the way in order to keep the consciousness of mankind corrupt. Well, now the gig's up, because people are realizing, as by the time we get to the end of our conversation tonight, that this corporation that was created in your name, that's what you've used to put everything on title. Remember, you didn't create this, so you've put your house on it, you put your car, your boat, your property. And that's why McDonald's, aka the government of Canada, or the government of British Columbia, the government of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, or wherever, remember, they're service corporations. There is no man or woman walking around called the government of New Brunswick or the government of Ontario. It's words on a piece of paper. But there is a man or woman that's supposed to be acting incredibly honorably, protecting. That's why government was protected, or pardon me, why I should say, this is why government was created. Government's sole purpose in being created, why? Was to protect the property of man, period.
So if we could go back to the birth certificate just for a moment, we don't have to reclaim our straw man name then. We just have to ignore this and set up according to your website, and our administrator had posted your website in the chat box, and I'll post it on the video later. But go to your website and you're showing how to register a live birth certificate, or does that nullify this?
Okay, so that's great, Dean. There's another key word, register. We never register anything. Why? Because when you register something, you're turning over control to somebody else. Remember that. This is the words that like, I mean, when you go to my site, you learn the power of a handful of words. And when you start to realize, like when you apply for something, that's to beg. Okay, so you never register anything. What you're doing is you're correcting the record. So you don't want to ignore this. What you have to realize is that, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with me. However, when you walk into court and you see that these legal proceedings are going against you, you walk in there and when you've got your correct ID that I have, you stand before that man, and then of course you put this in writing ahead of time in a notice to them at who's appearing, because they're moving under a legal presumption that they have the correct party that's appearing today, and you just address that first and foremost. Excuse me, Bob or Susie. That's another thing you need to know. I'm not being disrespectful, but when I walk in there and they require my name, you have to understand they are your public servant. So I say, thank you. I say, I give them my name. Before I get out, I say, I require, which is a nice way of saying demand, I require your name for my records. And they say, my name's John Smith. I say, thank you very much, John. From that point on, I call him John. Okay. I'm not under this guy's control. This is what you have to understand. Okay, these people have placed these terms and these positions, this theater that's been created all around us to intimidate us. And once they realize that there's a man or a woman actually standing in front of them, oh ho ho, it's a completely different situation in that courtroom. But they do everything they can to get you off that rock. So that CUSIT number, like I said, is very important that we were talking about there earlier with Dina, because that number is what they've used, that's been bought and sold on the stock exchange. It's how McDonald's went to the central bankers and said, hey, I've created this corporation, and this guy, Christopher James's name, he's an idiot. He doesn't know any better. So guess what? We're going to figure out how much money we're going to sucker out of him. And we figured it's going to be between $700,000 and $800,000 throughout the course of his life, through taxation and various other things that he's going to fall traps into, like tickets and hopefully not court or whatever, big charges, but definitely for sure we'll get him on a few traffic tickets, parking tickets. It's all the same game. So that's why it's important that you understand when you know who you are, because when you walk into these courts, this is a great line to say to them. Are you looking for the created or the creator? And then you point to yourself, right? And then you got them, because they're going, uh-oh, and they're going to do everything to get you off that square. And you say it several times if you have to. The trick seems to be 3 times in their court. But again, I don't want people to think that these are the games that you have to get engaged in right now with this court system. Why? Because I'll go right back to it again in 10 seconds. The rules of civil procedure. This is what has been used against all of us for a very long time on our public courthouses when we're trying to access them. And once this is now going to be pushed out of the way, they have to put forward, like I say, just download. You got to read the first page. It's called notice liability. Okay. And I even spelt liability wrong. Okay. I tell everyone I got a PhD in failure because that's how I got here. But the reason that I can laugh about that is because I want people to understand that there's another side of this as well. There's people that have done enormous work under the syntax. That means the actual format of how the court papers or communications are written to each other. See, back in the day, when people saw their name in all capital letters, they knew it wasn't them. They automatically knew it. And if they saw hyphens between names, they knew it had different joinder and different meanings. All of that stuff has been slowly stripped away from we the people through our education system, but where it remained was within the court systems and some other government agencies. And that's where they use it, like it's called in a styling book of syntax. It's called Styling Book in Chicago of 1998, I think, when it came out. That's when the majority of all these courts, this is what they've adopted. So it's referencing when you put a name in capital letters and when you don't, and why you do it, and all these various different things. At the end of the day, that's a rabbit hole, and you can swim in that all day long. See how quickly the truth is? I can show you. It's the same as this. Did you write that stylings book? No. Okay. When you access a public courthouse under common law as a man or woman, it's your truth. It's your love. It's your claim of wrong and harm that's occurred against you. That's what you've put in writing, and that's what you bring into the paper. And it doesn't matter if I write it in Jello, if I write it in upper and lowercase, if I write hieroglyphics. It doesn't matter. It's just the piece of paper. The man or woman has to move that court. The man or woman has to viva voce speak on the court and make their claim, of course, with the evidence in that. But that's why I'm saying some people thought, oh, you've spelled liability wrong, and you've got some other things you've capitalized, like I put the rules of civil procedure in bold letters on that first page in 3 sentences. Why? Because I wanted to hammer home to the man or woman that's working as staff as a public servant that you better pay attention to these 3 sentences. You better produce that the rules of civil procedure apply to I, a man or woman, or do not. There's the only other trespass. Remember, trespass covers everything under the sun, from your, anything, contract, you've been terrorized, your car's been whatever, damage to property. But there's only one other type of trespass, and that's called trespass on the case. And that happens at a public courthouse. And that happens when your what? Your property That's what you refer to as your lawful filing, not illegal filing. If your property is ever trespassed upon by any man or woman in that courthouse, that means that they've tried to put other paperwork in it that didn't belong there, or they've tried to affect it, just try to move it or just do something through paperwork, filing into it or stamping things or whatever, that they're trying to change something in it. That's a trespass on the case. The reason I'm telling you this, to show you that I'm at the dagger of the heart right now of this evil, is immediately, this is the second time that this has happened. I've done this one in real time now. The first time they pulled it out of the Maneri case that I filed last September. It was 18th. And at that point, it ran the full gauntlet. You have 21 days once you file it. And after you serve the people, after the last man or woman's been served, once they get a copy that you filed in the courthouse against them, they have 21 days to respond to file a defense into your court. In this case, it's a Sukleski court. Okay, Michael is the man who I'm also co-prosecuting with. Why? Because I have firsthand knowledge in this. I wrote all these communications to these 8 lawyers and 2 people acting as justices. There's 10 people that we're taking to court here that I'm prosecuting. 10 people. Not judges, not lawyers, even though that's the role that they're acting in. I could care less what you act in, Bobby or Susie. If you trespass against I or my fellow man and you're causing them wrong or harm, I'm going to come after you and I'm going to protect my fellow man. Why? Because I have a duty to do this. And now this duty that I've been doing, again, I should tell people I did this for 10 years, helping people and not charging anybody a dime, okay? Because I had to get my nose bloodied in the court system to know and understand exactly the sick game that's being played. And now I've got the keys. I've got the keys to the kingdom, and I'm shaking them like this, and I'm showing everybody, and now we've put that key in the lock, and we've turned it with that claim that went in on September 12th. Because the entire claim, you don't need to know anything about it, comes down to that one fact. They have to now bring forward an obligation that I've signed in contract, or that it is public law that we, the people, are bound by the rules of civil procedure. So see, what you do is you drill down on who writes the rules of civil procedure. And I should have brought it on here for tonight's session. I'm sorry, but I'll make sure it's up on my site. Actually, I'm going to do a talk on it on my live streams every Thursday. So this Thursday, I'm going to do a talk on exactly this point that we're going to talk about here. The rules of civil procedure, who writes them? It's very simple. The Superior Courts of Justice in Ontario Superior Courts, they're all in capital letters when you look them up online. That's because they're all corporations. They're all independent corporations, right? Well, what does a corporation do usually at the end of every year? It has annual filings. Beautiful. That's where the overall corporation puts out and says, these are all the wonderful new things we've done in the corporation. We're really tightening up our services. We're really providing better services. It's all about this patting each other on the back. Well, there's this one little paragraph in it that talked in 2010, I think it was, in their annual report. And it says the rules of civil procedure. And it's a beautiful little paragraph, and it tells you who writes the rules. And simply it's this. It's the man that acts as Attorney General. Remember, a man who acts as Attorney General is what? He's no different than the man or woman that would act as the top legal man or woman for that service corporation. So are you scared of the man that's the top lawyer for McDonald's? Hell no. Do you think if a man from McDonald's came after you, said that you were bound to follow this process, McDonald's process or rules or procedures at a civil courthouse, that you would follow those rules or civil procedure? No. You say, listen, the process that I'm moving forward in this public courthouse, that's my right. Here's my claim. It's very simple. Bob or Susie trespassed against me. Here's my claim of damages. I need to be made whole. And then, of course, the people that you've made the claim against, they have a right to defend themselves as well. They have a right to speak before the jury of your peers and lay any evidence that they have to counter your claim. And then at that point, that's when the jury goes off and does their thing. But like I say, getting back to it, it's very, very powerful, those rules of civil procedure, because this is the underlying kingpin.
Could we give you an example? Could I give you an example, and maybe you can apply those same rules? We had a few questions here. So I'll give you these 2 questions, and you can think about if they relate or how you want to answer them first. But what historical trusts and estates left to the benefit of man, like how to claim beneficiary status? Do you have something to say about that, Christopher?
Yep, we're born into a criminal system. So why are you looking to collect on something that was created all based on fraud? Absolutely, they're right. Like these birth certificates and that, people say, oh, it was created there as a trust that was set up. That's right. There's a trust for a corporation. You didn't create it, but you've never come back and claimed it. If you want to see a great video of it online, it's a short song. It's called The Holder in Due Course Blues. Look it up. And what it is in their system, if you didn't come back after 7 years, whether you know this or not, that's when they deemed your vessel, right? What they created this as a vessel, as Karen Hudas, a 20-year World Bank lawyer, states on my short videos of the foundational knowledge. She tells you that, when you don't come back after 7 years and you haven't claimed it, well, no one, number one, told your mother and father that when you were lying as a baby born moments in a hospital. And do you think you could have understood that as a baby? Of course not.
Does that mean if you're less than 7 years old, you could claim it?
Well, yeah, no, after, yeah, that's right. You could claim it.
If
It's
it's a
just
child
absolutely
that's less
ridiculous.
than 7, you could still claim it, right?
That's right, in their world, but that's what they've written up. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Where this hits the road is that what they've done is they've stolen your identity and they've committed massive fraud against us all our lives through taxation, all
Mhm.
right, through fines, through and then again, people say when they hear that, they think, oh my God, this guy doesn't believe in taxation. He believes in a free ride. For those of you that think that, you couldn't be further from the truth, because what you're not aware of, which is another pillar, another conversation we can do, is the creation of money. When you understand our Bank of Canada simply was taken from us in 1974, it was creating money interest-free for we the people, for all
Mhm.
our infrastructure, our roads, our hospitals, right? Our schools, our churches, everything. And then all of a sudden, stop doing that, because in 74, Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, he gave our property, he always comes back to the people's property, which are our patents for creation money. He gave this to a family that runs the business of international settlements. And they've had control of the creation of our patents. So now this family, a handful of people that nobody knows who they are, and this isn't conspiracy theory, it's all facts, same like the Federal Reserve, same group of people, same group of families that are creating money out of thin air. Money used to be backed by gold and silver until 1973, when Nixon took it off the gold standard, right? And from that point on, these families, imagine if you or I could create money, Dina, out of thin air, right? Both of you and I had that capacity, and both of you and I had children. But then all of a sudden, Dina came to me and she said, hey, Chris, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a little something on the side here. Maybe Dina threatens me, right? Maybe she says, hey, Chris, you better do this or that, or I'm not going to do it. She says, I want your family members, your children, to borrow money from me. I'll give them a really good interest rate, but they're going to get money from me. I'm going to be the only one creating it. And I went along with that. Would that not be the most horrific thing that I could ever do to my children? Talk about doing a horrific trespass against them, allowing Dina to lend them money at interest that they have to pay back. That's an impossible way to get out of, because in the system that's out there today, when $1 is created, okay, it comes with 50, say, for example, 50 cents interest, to keep it simple. Well, there was only $1 created. How are you supposed to pay back $1.50 if there's only $1 created and put into the system? Oh, well, this is their solution. We'll put another dollar in there to cover the 50 cents of that thing. Well, wait a second, that dollar that just came in, now you've got a dollar of it. See, and it's a perpetual trap. You cannot get out of it. And that's the casino we're born into, because first they've done this unlawful conversion against us at birth. We don't know who we are. Everybody thinks that legal applies to them. Everyone's walking around calling themselves a person or a legal person instead of a lawful man or woman or one of the people. You're not a citizen. A citizen is a slave within through the service corporation, Ontario, Canada, etc., as they've created. And that's why they're barking out all these orders to people, because they're actually speaking to the legal person which they created. Sure, Doug Ford or Justin Trudeau, you've got complete jurisdiction over this piece of plastic. You're going to walk into open court and point across the room to me, or if me and Dean are standing there, they're not going to point across the room and say, Chris and Dina there are my property. No, they're going to say that man or woman over there, that man and woman, they are my property. Right? No one's ever going to do that. So if they're not going to do that, hang on, one last thing. If they're not going to do that, then how can Justin Trudeau state that he can administrate property? That's Dean and me's rights without right. He can't do that. And none of the agents or officers under his control can do that. Remember, look at him as the head of McDonald's. Can any agent or officer of McDonald's do any of these horrific things that they're doing now? Mandates with vaccines, ordering people to stay home, shut down your businesses, the whole COVID thing's another thing. Go to my website later, but I just wanted to clear that, Dina, so everyone knows.
Thank you for that, Chris. There was another question here from the chat box that Tara has. In the context of child protection, because I remember seeing a video where you were helping a family with child protection and legal rights or lawful rights for
Awful.
kids.
Yep.
What are the legal remedies or lawful remedies, I guess, in these situations? If parents are confronted with a situation where child protection services has come to their door, what do we need to say in order to stop this action? Do we claim no jurisdiction and that the children are the property of the parents? What's the legal way to phrase this to be most effective? And can we just refuse services that we haven't asked for?
Absolutely. And then the key word again is, I keep hammering home because I know it's new to everybody. Look, it took me a while to get all this stuff too. That's why the power, you must understand the words that you use. You never use the word legal, right? Legal. Someone says, well, that's illegal. You can't do that. So I could care less. Legal, illegal, legal doesn't apply to me. That applies to the world of the dead. See, when you understand that simplicity, then those words don't creep into you. So when you're talking about your children, that's right. You do never refer to them as your children. They are your property. Okay, you created them, you brought them into this world, and until they are of conscious, sound mind as a young adult, you're responsible. You have a duty to them to protect them. Okay, so when they're the key thing is, like I say, first start to learn. A lot of people like to put the cart before the horse, right? They start to hear this information and they want to run off. And then there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that are in the situation right now where they're dealing with child protection services. So I can tell you in short, the experience that I had with Carl when we came to Moncton or whatever, what he did, there was a woman that had their 4 children property taken from them. They hadn't seen them in 4 months, and then they were going to court. They were looking at 18 months in jail each. They were never going to see their children again. Okay. So Carl had them go to court. He didn't establish their own court. That's the other thing you need to understand, is that in the legal world, you cannot be heard. It's a world of paper. So if things are really, really serious and these people are being real, I won't use the word, I'll keep it nice for Thanksgiving. If they're being very difficult in these court systems, these crown attorneys, then you don't mess around. You file a claim against them, that man or woman. Okay. You never sue a corporation. You always go after the man or the woman, because then, as I say, and I need to jump back into this, that's what happened as soon as we did Michael's case on September the 12th. What happened? At first, one of the lawyers filed right into the register saying, we require that this is removed. This is how they've been protecting themselves all this time. We require that this filing, the Suclesty Court, is removed from the Milton Courthouse. Why? Because it's not falling under the rules of civil procedure. See that? Ding, 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 ding. We got him. Because all these lawyers have been using the rules of civil procedure to pillage his father's estate. His father went to set up a will 2 years before he died, and he couldn't do it because the lawyers were telling him that the Estate Act applied to him. They would never allow him to give the majority of this money to Michael, etc. I just wanted to jump in that so you just understand that side of it. Sorry. So we were talking again from Child Protection Services. When this woman, they lost their kids, they called Carl. He was doing a live radio show. He said, the next couple that calls in, I'll get their children back from their property so I can shut everybody up who keeps telling me that what I'm telling them is nonsense. Carl's a very tough guy too. He went through hell himself, like all of us have. What you find out is that people that are at the forefront of this, like Dean or whatever, they've had something very horrific happen to them through the court system that has destroyed them in a very way. We've still all rebounded, we've still pushed through, but it does not negate this wrong and harm that's happened to us, right? And no matter how long it takes for me, I had to see the remedy to see that it was corrected for my family, and it just is unfortunately coming forth for the world now. The simple truth helps everybody. So Carl, what did he do? He had him simply go a 3-hour round trip. He says, I want you to put these 2 sentences into the court. The one sentence was, I claim trespass. And then in the brackets, I believe it said theft. And then after it said, did cause wrong and harm, big 24 font or 24 font. And then it's notice at the top into the court, their court file, the legal moving. And then the second line is, I require the immediate restoration of property. And then it said in brackets, exhibits 1 through 4. You flip the page over. It was 2-page claim, 2-page. Meanwhile, the husband, for the last year and a half, he was doing the Freeman crap, and he had like 2 feet, 3 feet of paperwork filed into the courthouse. Okay, because he's trying to find a way through their system. But when you understand the power of those words, property and trespass, and you understand that man or woman wearing the robe, oh, he's your servant. And once you establish that, he is not going to trespass against you. So you cannot have a hockey team on one side of the courthouse and a football team on the other, and the judge is going to be able to proceed. No, you've actually got the creator, the guy who created the judge's role, standing there, and then you've got some other man or woman that's acting in a society that we don't belong to, trying to bring their rules, codes, and civil procedures into my court. It doesn't work that way, okay? And once you understand that, my God, it is deadly for them. So he wrote that in those 2 sentences. Then when you flipped over the page, there was the 4, numbered 1 through 4, their property. Pictures of their property. No names. Nothing. This is why I teach people. Right? The name is actually irrelevant in law. Sure, you can use it for, that's Bob, I know him as Bob, or Susie, whatever. But at the end of the day, in law, it's that man or woman trespassed against me. So he said, you put that into the courthouse. Well, when they went back and they put that in, they've been having a lot of problems with the court clerk. Obviously, when things go wrong, if you've never been in a courthouse before, when you have something that's traumatic as this is, your children are being taken from you, you're in the courthouses an awful lot for a year or so before anything, well, sometimes depending how bad it is, but you're in the courthouses a lot, and they start to recognize the faces of the people. So all this time that they'd been going to the courthouse before, it was not comfortable. It was not a good interaction with this clerk court. But now when they came back the second time and they said, we want to file this into the court, they were in court in 2 days. It was on a Wednesday. They were court on the Friday, I believe it was. And as soon as the court clerk saw it, see, they recognized certain things, the wording, especially. There's that word, property and trespass, nothing fancy. They can't get around it. She says, can you hang on for a second? She went, and I guess she gave it to the judge. All of a sudden she comes back and she says, the judge wants to see you in his chambers. And they're like, what? See, so if you ever hear, oh, judges never see people in their changers, horse, you know what, right? They do. So he brings them into chambers and he says, would you like some lemonade? Really talking to them all sweet. As soon as they sit down, he says, listen, he says, I know we're in court. He's looking at their file. We're in court here in a couple of days. He said, I just noticed what you're filing into the court. So he has to review everything before he comes out, right? He wants to see it. And he just happened to be in his office that day. I guess perfect timing when they put this notice into the court. He points to the word. He says, look, he says, we're all here trying to help your children. He says, you really want to call them property? And he's pointing to the document that they wrote. He says, you sure you want to write property? Why don't you use children, keep it. Property's kind of hard. And, Jesse and Jonathan, oh my God, this judge has been so nice. He's given us lemonade. What a great guy. Well, yeah, kind of makes sense. We want to do this right. So they changed the word, right? From children to property, from property to children. Then they left, they get home, and it's an hour, 3-hour round trip. They get home and they call Carl. Carl says, how did it go? He said, oh, fantastic, blah, blah, blah. Then he tells them about the judge, and then Carl loses it. I won't say the language he used to them, but basically they got back in the car and they went back there immediately to change that word back to property. And he told him, he says, if you don't change that word back, he says, you're never going to see your children again. So they went into court. It was their court on the Friday. Just wrap it up quickly. Jonathan gets up on the husband. He does his dog and pony show for an hour and a half with all this Freeman common law stuff, which he thought it was. Again, you're in the wrong jurisdiction. It's like when you're trying to use common law and you're standing in a legal proceeding, it's not going to work because they can't hear you. Their entire court's under a completely jurisdiction. They're going under that initial presumption from that very first day that you appeared, right? And they don't want to let go of that. So the only way you can correct it is you got to file a claim usually, or a really strong notice to challenge jurisdiction into their court. So what happened was that Jonathan gets on the stand for an hour and a half. Nothing happens. I want everyone to know too, there's 20 affidavits into the court for these children. There were 4 children and there were 5 affidavits per child. Everyone from a healthcare worker, a psychologist, a doctor, whatever they had, right? There was 5 affidavits per child, all supporting the removal of these children that were now all separated, all in independent homes right across the province, right? They hadn't seen anybody in 4 months. Imagine that devastation. So Jonathan gets up on the stand. Nothing happens. He gets off the stand. Now, Jessie gets up, the mother. Carl told her exactly what to do. She gets up on the stand. As soon as she's put under oath or affirmation, she stands up and she points to that woman. See, you don't point to fictions. She says, that woman there, and who was she pointing to? The woman who she knew that was the head of CPS that was in that courtroom at that day. Why? Because she's the woman responsible for all her agents and officers under control, just like Justin Trudeau is, just like Doug Ford is for Ontario, and I don't know who the premier is out in New Brunswick, but he's also liable as well. He's responsible for every single man and woman that works under his service corporation. See how powerful this is? So now it's as if you've got Justin Trudeau in front of you, or Doug Ford, or whoever's in New Brunswick in that courtroom, but she has the head woman of CPS there. And as soon as she points, she says, that woman took my property. And then she turns and she points to the man, the judge that they sat with 2 days earlier in the court, in his private chambers. And she says, I require, there's that word demand, I require the immediate restoration of property. He's like, well, don't you want to work? And Carl prepared her for it. He said, you jump on him right away and say it again. She points at him again. I require the immediate restoration of my property. He says, we're going to take a 15-minute recess here. And he says, we're going to get this property restored. And he clanked the gavel down. Well, as soon as he did that, all hell broke loose. Jesse and Jonathan were leaving the courtroom. And then all of a sudden, all 20 affidavits, they all got pulled out of the courtroom because now all those people were liable because the judge just restored their property. And the Crown Attorney comes walking out into the courtroom. What does he say to them? He's holding up this 2-cent paper, right? 2-page paper with 2 sentences on the one notice at the top and the four pictures of the property on the back. He goes, who wrote this? To Jesse and Jonathan. And she says, I did. He says, I don't believe you did, but if you did, I'll use a nice word. He says, we're scared poopless. Okay. They were terrified. And then he offered her a job. Of course, this case has been removed now from the court system, but we've got all the family there. We've got the pictures, the kids, everyone's all back together. They've got all the additional foundational documents. So the reason I'm telling you that is for everyone, I've told you this truth. What actually happened in a Moncton courthouse with 4 children is that's why I'm sharing with you. You learn the power of the word property and you don't refer to them as anything else. You stand in that court and you say, who claims that this is not their property and not mine? That's my property. And then you hit them with, well, who can administrate property without right? Boom, you're done. So you have to understand the power of those words. That man who's acting as a judge, you say to him, Bob or John, do you have jurisdiction over a man or woman? That means control. That's what that word jurisdiction means. And he's going to say, no, I don't. Mind you, he's not going to want to answer it. He's going to say, listen, he'll try and dog and get around it, avoid it, whatever. But end of the day, you keep his feet to the fire, say, Jim, I require that you answer that question. Am I under your jurisdiction as a man or a woman? And then he's going to say, no, you're not. And that's when you realize that you are the man. You're the one that's actually the highest entity within that courtroom once you know how to achieve it. But you don't try and achieve it. You can achieve it for those of us that are seasoned once you're already in the middle of a legal proceeding, but it's best to do it with establishing your own claim in court, which is, again, it's always those two sentences, right? It's always trespass that's occurred against us, causing wrong or harm. Identify simply what the trespass is. And the second line is, I require the immediate restoration of property. And that property means whatever damages have been done to you, whatever interest that's come to it, that's all going to come back to you. See how simple that is? And that's why what I'm sharing with you here tonight, I'll end it on this, Dina, this most important, powerful truth. Those rules of civil procedure, I need every man and woman in this country to understand the power of that simple fact that it does not apply to we the people. Why? Because this claim that is right now sitting, this light for our country and our world in a Milton courthouse, that once they don't kick that out this time, the bar is moved to the side. And now Christopher and Michael are going to access that public courthouse. We are going to hold a common law court, and we are going to see that these people are held accountable for what they did. But it is also in that moment that is going to open up the gateway for the truth to come in surrounding COVID-19. All these other lies, all this trespass that's occurred against us when we're born. Don't you think before we all talk about all these other things that are going on in this world, and there's so many things I know, right? We all want to see the justice restored. We all want to see people held accountable. We want to see love restored back to this world. Well, why don't we all start at the most important part and for all of our lives, when the first trespass that occurred against all of us when we were born? That is the most powerful moment in all of our lives. And people are finally seeing that now, because that is the solution. Once you bring out into the light this trespass, it requires, all of a sudden, no man or woman is going to get dragged into a legal court again. Unless you've done wrong or harm to a man or woman, you're done. And all this money that we've paid in taxation, okay, if you want to be real small about it and you can only think about yourself, as a lot of people do, unfortunately, but they'll love this too. Every single dollar that you paid in taxation was all based on fraud. Right? Remember, if McDonald's created documentation when you were born, they created a corporation, they told you your whole life, Christopher, this is you, and you owe us taxes, right? Well, there's no contract between me and McDonald's now. So yeah, I've been paying all this taxation all this time because everyone else around me is doing it. This is what we all have to do to be honorable people, supposedly. We got to pay our taxes to support one another. See, they've twisted everything around so that you don't really understand what's going on. Again, when you understand the creation of money, taxation disappears. But when you understand the bigger picture now, is that we are talking about trillions of dollars now coming back into this country that's been stolen from we the people, and also been used as the auspice for these service corporations to commit all this taxation on us. It's an absolute huge moment. That's why this one claim, even though it deals in the State Act, they've got to bring forward now an obligation that what? The rules of civil procedure apply, that the CRA has an obligation or a debt that they claim are true. This one man's estate is a little over $1 million. These lawyers are pillaging it. They just sold his cottage this past week on the 8th of October, so that they could pay for their fees, because they haven't been getting paid since September, since they've been carrying out this dog and pony show. So we brought them all into court to say, okay, fine, listen, we're absolutely 100% in agreement if you provide the obligation that Michael is bound to the rules of civil procedure, the State Act, and a few Justices Acts, etc. But when those words were put pen to paper, that applies to every one of you. Every one of you out there, my fellow man and woman. And that's the power of this, because the minute that this bar gets moved out of the way, guess who's going to get brought into court? Justin Trudeau. Right? Doug Ford, every man and woman as Attorney General, every man or woman acting as Minister of Health or Finance across this country, because they are involved at the head of this snake of creating this massive fraud against we the people. But the reason that I'm ultimately here tonight is because of COVID. All right. It's all over my website. Please go there and watch the videos of multiple doctors that, again, how we are being lied to and manipulated. Why? The same people, and I'm standing here putting my life on the line, the same people that did this to us at birth are running the same shtick, the same fraud with COVID-19. All right. They're destroying all our businesses. Everything is all based on a lie. The numbers, even the numbers that the CDC and the WHO are trying to bury now, are exploding and showing everybody that there is no pandemic. There never was no pandemic. We have as much as a chance as Dr. Cahill said, professor of 23 years that she drilled down on this out of Ireland. She says, you have as much chance of catching this COVID, which she specialized in, she's like a flu, she says, of 1 in 1.8 million people. And yet you've got a chance of catching heart disease in 1 in 3. See? It's right in front of everyone's face. Why are we having this problem? Because we don't have great shows like this, great gatherings like Dina's pulled together here this evening for everybody, for all of us to have a conversation and talk of what is really going on here in this world and the truth, right?
So, Christopher, do you have a few minutes for some questions?
Yep.
So, what would be the first step in establishing a common law court from a public court? So, let's say we wanted to take, Premier McNeil to court, for example, or Dr. Robert Strang, who's our chief medical officer here, or Premier Higgs, who's in New Brunswick. What's the first step to establish that?
The first step for all of us is to establish that the rules of civil procedure don't apply to we the people.
Okay.
That's all. And that's what's in the court right now, Dina. That's what I'm saying. Nobody needs to worry about filing anything. We all collectively in this country simply have to have this conversation. Wait a minute. There's a society that we do not belong to called the bar, and they are preventing us from accessing our public courthouse unless what? Unless we use their legal forms. And all of you know now, legal doesn't apply to a man or woman. These are facts. So why are we being forced at a public, remember? It's a public courthouse, not a private courthouse. If it's a private courthouse, well, that's when they could implement and impose on us these codes, rules, and statutes and say, nope, you're not coming in here because this is a private building. We only do bar. We only do legal contracts in here, legal proceedings. Okay, well, where do we the people go then for our lawful proceedings? Well, see, it's supposed to be happening at a public courthouse. So when you say what, you have to understand how quickly this is going to happen, Dina. In this case, it's in there right now. This is why we need all the support of every man and woman across country on this, because if they go and try and kick this out, we have to come right back hard at them to push this back into the courthouse. Because when our country sees it, that's the only conversation that has to occur. Because once we address that the rules of civil procedure don't apply to a man or woman, that's what they're hanging everything on from blocking this truth coming into the court. And right behind that is going to come the truth of this unlawful conversion. Right? It's very simple claims. They're all going to be 2 or 3 sentence claims because we've all got the evidence. And this is going to cause a hard reset right across our country. But more importantly, at the same time, we the people are going to be able to hold these people that many of us like myself that have the evidence, they're now going to have the vehicle to simply, like, for example, Kevin Arnett and all his incredible work that he's done with the children and outing all that, that man is going to be a lightning house with this. That man is going to show up at a courthouse. And he's probably going to come with a sleeping bag because he's going to be there so long filing prosecution after prosecution and holding these people accountable. That's what the common law is. It gives the people the power to hold people accountable. And that's why I know Kevin has an incredible heart in everything that he's doing in this world. And I really hope he looks and sees it, what is happening right here in the now. We don't have to go and focus on anything else. We can focus right on this now, because the second that this bar acknowledges finally the service corporations and all their agents and officers acknowledge we're in the robes, that this does not apply to us, Dina, the rules of civil procedure, and that massive boulder is pushed out of the way, it's game on.
But where's the court? Like, where is a public court? Are they different from legal courts?
No, a public court, remember, a public court, wherever a man or woman goes, we're ultimately holding court. But for our purposes, do we not pay for these provincial and federal courthouse buildings? Straight yes or no? Yes, we do. And you ask any of the wonderful staff that are in there, I've got them on tape lots of times I'm in there, is this a public courthouse or private courthouse? I just stopped to do it, just for shits and giggles, and plus I've got it on record as well. I say, this is a public courthouse. I said, absolutely. Well, I'm here to access it. We all smile and we get on with our business, so to speak. But it's a public courthouse. So that's where people were getting confused. They're going, well, what does he mean by a public courthouse? That's a public courthouse. Any provincial or any federal court building that you access, when you pay your money, remember, it's a venue. That courthouse is like going to secure a dance hall for one night or whatever, or one day, or whatever you need time for to move your case and claim. So imagine this. I can use these metaphors to show you the similarity so you get what is actually going on. Imagine you got a wedding coming up and you go and you secure one of these dance hall rooms, and then you got to wait 21 days for you can get in there, like us filing for 21 days. And then you come back on the 21 days and say, all right, let's get this party started. We're going to get in there. And they go, whoa, 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 whoa. Just a second, Christopher. You've got to use these tablecloths. You've got to use these napkins. You've got to set the tables up this way. You can't play these songs A through F. You have to have a break you get where I'm going? They give all these terminologies, all these rules and conditions of what you're applying for this room that you've rented for your own private dance hall. Well, when you operate in a public courthouse, you're securing a public room, all right? A room, that's why it's called public, that the people can come into and they can hear the claims of their fellow man and woman that's being brought onto the record. That's what it means to be put on the record, right? You're speaking at viva voce. And that's how quickly this is, because a lot of people have got confused at what common law is. They think that it's this big, you've got to, I've gone down the rabbit holes too. I've read all these books for years that people have written on common law, what it is. And then I've realized, oh my goodness, it is that simple. It's just the law of what exists within your heart. When a man or woman trespasses against you, simply identify who the people are correctly on paper, write what the claim of the trespass is, file it at a public courthouse, serve the people, and bring them into a public courthouse and hold them accountable through a jury of your peers. But if you go through a legal side, well, then you've got a man wearing a black robe, and then they've got this whole thing called the rules of civil procedure, and you've got to jump through hoops the whole time. So there's no justice there.
This is a minor detail, but do we book the courtroom in advance?
No, which again, you have to, yes, you do in advance. How that works, as I said, after the 21 days of the filing goes, which you're going to see happening here in another week or so with Michael. The last man or woman got served on the 25th of September. So it's 21 days from that point on. And they've been attacking the file big time. They've written 4 times now into the registrar to remove this claim, right? Where they have no standing against these people that aren't listed in the claim. So when you see, excuse me, what I've written back, I'm writing to the registrar saying, hey, who are these people trespassing on the case? Get them out of here. Their name isn't in this claim. And they don't know what to do because I'm drawing their feet to the fire. I'm saying, look, this guy is writing in that the rules of civil procedure. You want to produce the contract that I signed that I'm bound to the rules of civil procedure promulgated from a society which I not belong to called the bar? I don't have anything to do with the legal world. See, I'm not being ignorant. I'm not being combative with anybody. I'm simply stating a fact. And now the wheels are turning with the registrars because you see, the people that work as registrars, they're not lawyers. They're not members of the bar. They're like you and I, the average Joe, a man or woman, they're one of the people. So it's starting to turn in their head now going, uh-oh, and they're in a real tough position because they've got these incredible relationships that they've had all these years with all these black robe ones, right? Everybody knows everybody in the courthouse, right? Especially the court clerks. There's only a handful of them. So we have a problem here. We can't have a conflict of interest, but the registrars are having enormous pressure put on them right now to have this file pulled out of the courthouse. Well, if they're going to do that, they have to prove, again, produce an obligation, produce where Christopher has said that I've consented to the rules of civil procedure, or one of these people that are writing this communication, they're going to come forward and claim that I'm property. See how simple that is? Once you understand the power of that word property, and that's where we're at right now. So in another week and a half, 2 weeks, that's when we're going to go back and we're going to start to move this claim. And that's when we're going to really see what they go to do. See, I'm going to lead by example here, Dean. I want the whole world to see what's going on right now because this applies in every single common law country around this world. It's happening in every public courthouses right across our land. We've been denied access because of this one underlying pin that no one's been able to bring it onto the light powerfully enough. Well, I've been able to do it through the grace of God because I've got a ton of casework that backs up exactly what I'm saying. And I've tangled enough with them, the courts now, that I've got them pinned. I've got them cornered. If you ever watch my Thursday night live streams, I've got a great little picture. It says at the bottom, it's only a matter of time. And it's a bunch of pawns on a chessboard that have all surrounded the king and queen and the knights and the horse has fallen, right? And it's a great picture. And that's literally the moment that we're at right here, right now. It's not going to be an easy fight. They're going to push it out. I know they're going to try to, but we are going to get this remaining into the courthouse. And that's going to be the moment that all of this stuff changes. And then all of us have the correct, proper protection that we've always been guaranteed from the moment we came into this world. Because every man and woman in this country is going to now know the legal world doesn't apply to us, and nothing that comes out of a man Justin Trudeau's mouth or any of their underlings applies to us. They can't order us to do anything, but they are accountable to us.
This is great information. Everybody in the chat and on the call are really loving it. So thank you, Christopher. I have a few more questions. This is a minor one, but it says, is using the word wish instead of required as strong? Yes.
Required is more if you would use that. Remember, it means demand. When you wish something, you're standing in the creator capacity. I wish. And that's supposed to be your servant that there's, right? This is that sick game. You get a play on words. But as I say to everybody, it all comes back to, you don't have to learn any of that stuff. You don't have to know any of that stuff. Just know this one thing right now. We, the people, have been taken over, and the way to undo all of this corruption from birth, the way to bring all of this into the light is address that one question, the rules of civil procedure. Because once you get these people at the courthouse out of the way, that's why they're blocking us. Now the truth is going to come into that courthouse, and we're going to seat a grand jury. We're going to load that gallery up with our fellow man and woman to come there and bear witness, because it's going to be done on the public record, and we're going to broadcast it live to our country at the same time. Why can we do that? Because we're the creators. See, we come into this world as the creators, man and woman, and we created government to protect the property of man. Remember where you stand. When you act as a man or woman, we are the creators. So when I access that public courthouse, I can do whatever the hell I want in that public courthouse, providing I'm not doing wrong or harm. And this is a duty that I have to bring this truth as quickly out to our world in this moment right now. And that's what's about to happen. And that's what Earth United, this is the same claim I'm working with Australia, the United States, Ireland, Scotland right now. Actually, I got to watch the clock here. I got to get on in a half an hour with Australia. And they're doing the exact same thing. They're putting the exact same format of a claim in. And all they're doing even though it's a ticket that a guy got for coming out of his house for this COVID nonsense, we're simply addressing, he's filing a claim, and we know what's going to happen. They're going to try and attack the rules of civil procedure and throw it out of that public courthouse. This is in Australia. Not so much, because now they're going to do the same filing that I've done, and we're going to block them. And that's why we're bringing the single truth out to the light, because once that is removed, all of a sudden you've removed all the power that these people have been yielding for all these years. These bar members, these crown attorneys, these people acting as judges or justices or court clerks. All of a sudden, they're going to realize when a man or woman appears in front of them, that court clerk's going to say, "Good day, man," or, to the man or woman, say, "Are you looking to file a lawful filing or a legal filing? Which are you here for today?" Because that's how our courthouse is supposed to operate in duality. It has a legal realm, of course. We have big corporations like McDonald's and Burger King, and sometimes they might enter into contract agreements or supply chain agreements. They're very complicated. That's what a lawyer's for. That's what a lawyer operates in the world of the dead, right? But a lawyer, he doesn't, I didn't talk on this word, Dean, I should have. He doesn't represent you, okay? It's a trick word. Split the word. R-E, separate it, and what do you have? Represent. That's what every lawyer does to a man and woman. When you retain a lawyer, he has to represent you. And you go, wait a minute, Chris, what's he representing us as? Ding, 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 ding. He's representing you as that fiction, that legal person that was created when you're born. Why? Because his world only deals in the legal world, in the world of the dead. See the sick game that's going on right now? And that lawyer, he has an oath to that court that supersedes any client he could ever bring into him. It's a complete rigged fence. That's why I'm saying there is no justice for we the people. There never has been in a legal world, because we have this one underlying foundational big piece of fraud in which all their courts are moving in. And again, the people in the bar, I have lots of friends that are bar members. Okay, not lots, a couple of them. They are now seeing what has been done, that they've also been lied to. A lot of these people that go into the legal world, the bar, they think that that's the law, right? But they don't understand the difference between legal and lawful, right? We're lawful, we're up here. All these crown courts are inferior courts to the court of a man or woman. That's the common law. When Dina enters the court, whatever your last name is, Dina, your middle name, whatever you choose to call it, it could be the Dina court. Right? And when Dina goes into court, she's going to lay forward this trespass of these people who she didn't know came into her property, private property, and then started administrating over her and commanding her to do all these steps or whatever, and making her believe that her process in order to execute and secure her rights properly in a public courthouse were through a legal process. They never were. Those lawyers are massively in debt now. They're liable to Dina and every other man. See, that's why this is big with Michael, because this is an estate act. See, this is the beauty of the truth. All you have to do is let the truth free, and it will take care of everything once it's let go correctly. And I'm blessed enough that I have this foundational truth that once this is being let go now into the system, and my fellow man, like I've got people filing court cases in Alberta, Manitoba, they're really kicking in right now across this country because they want to fight back properly. They want to correct the record. And now that everyone's given the truth of who they are in the sick little game that's going on in these public courthouses, people are now getting off their hind legs, and they're actually filing and moving courts and cases. So it's
Well, if you have samples of what, those forms, we'd love to have a look at them. So we'll go to your website and see. We have one more question if you have time.
Yep.
Can you actually get, I know one thing about, I think it was video 2, where you talked about the Federal Reserve System, and 40% of the taxes go to London and 60% to the Vatican. We're all paying to the Vatican,
Yep.
even if we're not Catholic.
Yep. Yep.
Isn't that amazing? So this lady says, can you actually get taxes you paid while you're working back? Can you recover them?
Absolutely, because it's all based on fraud. Go and look at your tax bill that you got, right? Go and look at all the identification you've been given since you've come into this world. Right? To show you the power of the truth that I'm doing here, the Maneri case. When you're asking for templates, yes, there's templates on my website for the creating your custom ID. It's all right there for you to grab from. But for the actual filing the claim in court, download my claims in court and realize and read it. You can use that as a foundational template right now. But what everyone has to realize is that once we get this single battle of the rules of civil procedure, doesn't matter what the case is, this is the only discussion we have to have right now with the bar in public, out in the open, because this is going to stop the police also from doing all this wrong and harm. Why? Because then they're going to know that they're liable. Then they know that they can't go and enforce any of this indoctrination, vaccinations, anything on people and without their consent. And they realize that they're only there. See, a police officer's been lied to too. Sorry, you asked the question. I want to stay on the question point because I get going off sometimes. But in dealing with the Federal Reserve, is that what you're referring to, Dina?
No, actually, I have another question here. I'm just trying to get to all the questions because I know your time is limited. Are passports considered unlawful?
Absolutely. Remember, if there's two things in the legal world and the lawful world that eviscerate all, and they are fraud. If fraud was ever apparent from the conception of the proceedings that began to the end, if anywhere right up to the final judgment of the man wearing the robe, if fraud is anywhere within that court process, it eviscerates all. Okay, as soon as fraud touches anything, it eviscerates it. You got to go back to the beginning and do it again. What is the other thing? Jurisdiction. See how simple that one is? And now you know the difference between jurisdiction. Jurisdiction doesn't, it means control, but it doesn't mean venue. This is what lawyers are taught, that the jurisdiction means, oh, I'm in the jurisdiction of Toronto, you know, or the Ontario court system. See, they'll say, oh, it's in a different jurisdiction. It's in the New Brunswick court system, or it's in the Moncton or Manitoba, whatever. That's what the lawyers are taught is jurisdiction. No, no, no. The big stick, the big trump card, the jurisdiction is land, air, water. What's this court case that you moved against me? Was it a legal proceeding? Yep. Well, that was in the water, Jack. And look, you got the wrong parties here. I'm not bound by any legal processes or concerns. So there's fraud that's being committed, and they're in the wrong jurisdiction. I'm in the land, Jack. So that eviscerates all the orders. You see how hard of a reset this is going to be in our system? It's massive. But this is what we need, because people have got to get their heads out of what is really going on here. We have an attack on every man and woman and child in this world. Are literally the balance of humanity hangs in it right now because of these vaccinations that they're trying to enforce on people. This colossal lie that's been rolled out surrounding COVID-19. Okay, they're using this, the central bankers, the same ones, because they control the mainstream media. They're able to keep the communication, the content, the image of what is actually going on in the world in this false states of terror, because they control the media, right? They control the governments. They control every service corporation in this world. Why? Who created them? Who created the corporation Canada? Who created the corporation New Brunswick? Who created the corporation Ontario? It wasn't we the people. It was these people, the central bankers, the Pope, and the Queen, a long time ago. They're the ones that set this system up, right? That's how they're able to rule and control us. Because remember, once we get dragged out and registered and we're incorporated on paper and we don't know any difference, then we've been dragged out to the jurisdiction of the sea, maritime law. And the Pope claimed all souls, right? All corporations, right? All corps were going to be his. So that's how they've done it. That's how they've got control over the people. It's through this simple ignorance, and it is so powerful. So powerful.
We just had a question about masks. You know, how do we, you know, fight not wearing masks? I just don't, and no one has challenged me on it. You know, I haven't worn a mask this whole time.
Neither have I, Dina. And what I say when I walk into a store, I just walk in. If anyone, like I went to the beer store there a couple of weeks ago, hadn't been there for a few months, and it was ridiculous. But anyways, the one guy points to me, sir, I says, a mask. I says, just, you know, I said, the mask compromises my immune system. He says, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He says, you know, we're not even supposed to ask. I'm sorry. The guy just totally cowered back. Not that I was being, you know, looking for a fight with him. I just know it compromised my immune system. He says, oh, I'm sorry. And that's all you have to say, because it's the truth. Yeah. You look up what the masks are doing to people. We are compromising. Everything we've been told, Dina, is the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
Yeah, I know. I just say, you know, it reduces my oxygen. I can't wear one.
That's right. That's right.
How do we make an ID? I don't know if you have any. I know you have to go, so I'm just trying to. If you have any last minute questions, folks, pop them in, and I'll try to get to them. How do we make an ID? I don't know. Kristen.
Yeah, they're in three Word documents on my webpage. The reason that they're long, when you'll see the finished product as well. You'll see that you got to first acquire this document. Now, where you guys are, see, we can do a little show on that, Dina. That I've just started to hear from people around New Brunswick that they've pulled the plug on supplying these records now. You know why?
They're onto you.
No, for your protection. This is what they just told a woman that reached out through another interview I did there 3 or 4 days ago. She phoned in. She said, can you tell Christopher that the woman at the Registrar General, she actually wrote right up to them there, because that's where that record goes and all this documentation is created from hospital. She says, I wrote directly to them. She says, and I spoke to them on the phone. And the agent actually said, we are no longer allowed to give the statement of live birth, the hospital record out. She says, how come? He says, it's for your own protection. You believe that crap?
So what's your recourse for that?
Well, what's going on with Michael's case? Remember what I said? As soon as we get in there and the rules of civil procedure get passed out of the way, guess who Christopher's going after? Christopher's also going after the woman, I think her name is Alexandra Schmidt. Whoever she is, the Registrar General in Canada, she's up in Thunder Bay there. She's going to have a little bit of a ride to get brought down here. But again, as soon as we get in with the rules of civil procedure pushed out of the way, that's when these correct and powerful court cases are going to come forward. I'm going to be able to set out a warrant and arrest for Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford in a heartbeat. And I have the evidence alone of the wrong and harm and what they've committed against the people of this country. Do you not think that they don't know very well what they're doing? Oh, they know exactly what's going on. They know exactly that there's no pandemic. They know exactly, well, don't get me started, but yes.
I know you have to apply, you have to address them as an individual, but one of the questions from the chat box is, could we make a claim as a group of men and women, or is it a family of a man or woman?
You don't need to. Remember, it's all about being efficient. Why would we want to go and get together a group of people if one man has the capacity, he's got the truth, hey, I'll just go do it, right? He's doing his duty. So you don't want to convolute the situation, because you don't need 50 people or 100 or 1,000 people standing behind that man going, yes, that's the claim that we're making. You just need one man to come forward with it, and then you have all the people bearing witness in that courthouse. That's the power of it. So that's what I mean. It's always the same eight words, you know, basically, I claim trespass, did cause wrong and harm. That's it. That's the first line of your claim that you're stating. In the Sukleski case, yes, you're going to see that I drew out about 17 points in it, but I could have literally have done it in 2 or 3 sentences. But I also am aware that I have to also help educate not only my fellow man, but the people that are working in the court rooms, right? They've got to see something that's familiar to what they're seeing so that they understand. I can't just give them a block, you know, a chopped version, because they go, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I also do it in that regard. So like I said, it's very powerful when there's much more strength exactly in all of us. But if all of us are filing a court, you don't need to get into, you know, class action suits, because once this truth is brought in once into the courthouse, like the rules are pushed out. Or does Justin Trudeau claim that we the people are property? Nope.
Oh, Christopher, your mic. I don't know. Can you, I've just lost your audio. No, I still can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah,
I can still hear you, Christopher. You're still here, man. Dina can't hear you, but the rest of us can.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. So that's ultimately why I was here tonight, everyone. I'm very grateful for being here. This is an enormous truth. This is not about, let me make this perfectly clear. It's not about Christopher James, okay? What I've laid before everyone here tonight is about all of us. It's a truth. It's a trespass that happened against every single man and woman when we were born. And that's all we need to look at right now. Simply drill down on that, and that one question that's before the courts. This isn't something we've all got to gather and get together, you know, and start, you know, talking about across the whole country. It's already happened. It's already in the courthouses right now. I could turn this country and this world around in literally 2 weeks from now. That's how quickly I can do that, because our courthouses are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if they do not kick this out of the courthouse, I'm holding courthouse on the very following Sunday, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to have that courthouse filled with thousands of people. All right, because I know we've got about 50,000 people now in Ontario that are aware of this, that are emailing me from our collective. Again, when you subscribe to Earth United as well, it helps put you in that data system so that we know where our boots are on the ground, so that when we are at a certain level of number-wise of people that are fully understandable what this paperwork simply is representing all of us of this unlawful conversion, and that they've been stealing and committing constructive fraud, you know, against us all our lives. But more importantly, the rules of civil procedure do not apply to we the people. Let these other people that are now moving their claims forward that have the evidence. For example, I did an interview with Judy Mikovits, Dr. Judy Mikovits, 7 weeks ago now, and I've kept it back for a very important reason, because it's explosive. It's unlike everyone that she's ever done before. She's gone through 8 lawyers, and she's never been allowed to put the firsthand knowledge and evidence on the record. She's been blocked every time. Why? Now everybody on this call understands. She's been in the wrong jurisdiction. She's in the world of the dead, the sea. And those lawyers and corrupt judges, that's how they can block everything from getting in, because they allow their rules of civil procedure to follow, to dictate to what a man or woman's supposed to do. And when you realize you're not under those rules of civil procedure, you go through that court like lightning. You make your claim in front of your fellow man, move it before them, and I believe that they are going to see the merit in your claim, as these claims that are coming around now, surrounding everything from COVID to what I've laid before you here now, to the banking, to chemtrails, to 5G, to fluoride. That's why this is so beautiful, is because it doesn't matter what incredible thing you've been fighting for on your front. Everybody needs to simply realize this one question. Once that's answered, the rules of civil procedure don't apply to we the people. It's game on. It is game on, because in every man and woman, that's what I think Kevin Arnett would just be awesome. The guy would be off the charts. And I've always, like I said, I've extended to talk to him anytime too, Dina, because I love the man for everything that he's done in this world. And he's done an incredible gift for these native people that are out in British Columbia and right across Canada.
And it was through the International Common Law Courts that Kevin Arnett is how you say his name.
Sorry, Arnett.
Yeah, Arnett, no worries. But had Pope Benedict, you know, step down from his position in 2013. So he's done a lot of work internationally, you know, globally with common law. But again, there's all different levels. We need to really work at all different levels and attack from all sides. Yep. So we so appreciate you being here. I hope we can have you back for another you know, call at some point.
Sure.
I'll connect with you and see what your schedule is like. I know you're a busy man, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And I don't know if Zoom's like YouTube, but yes, I apologize in advance. I do speak quick. I know that.
That's great.
I speak quick, but the good thing about YouTube, I don't know if they got it with Zoom, but you can play it back and you can slow it down, which is great for a lot of people with me. They like to slow it down. They say then they really enjoy it because they're not stressed out. They're missing words and this and that, you know, and they don't have to listen to it 1,000 times then. But thank you for having me, Dina. It's been a pleasure. And like I say, this is all about truth, people. The fight is right here now. It's not the elections down the road or something that we can plan and work for. Every single day right now is paramount. It's a gift to us. And we've got to find a way. Like I say, I've got about 17 days, I think 15 days until the 21st, the 21 days are up. And then I'm going. And you're going to hear about it in real time, live through the week. And that's when the rubber hits the road. Once we get past this hurdle that's been in front of mankind for a very long time, it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
Before you go, maybe just give your contact information again. I think someone posted your website, but are there certain places you mentioned something on Thursdays, a live feed?
Yes, if there's 3 places I would ask you please to subscribe. First is my website. If you subscribe on my website, then what you get automatically, whenever I'm doing these live streams, I send out a communication, usually the day before, and it gives you the date and the time, and it shows you what's being described. The other place you subscribe is on the YouTube channel, A Warrior Calls as well. You'll get notices from them. And then the third place is earthunited.global. And then that gets you in the global picture with the entire world. And it's incredible to see how this world, places I've never even heard about, these lights are starting to come on now where people are starting to realize, because the same trespass, Dina, has occurred against all of us.
Yeah.
That's why this is so powerful. It's occurred against every man and woman from the moment we were born. You don't got to say, oh, we all got to figure out, you know, when it happened. Oh, you know, 5 or 7 years after. No, no, no. It happened moments after we were born in the hospital. The second your parents put your signature on those documents, that's when this trespass occurred. And once that's brought into the light, it's going to correct all the records. It's going to correct all our property because we've got everything incorrect on title. And that's just one element of it. So thank you.
Well, and thank you for all the work you've done. We really appreciate you. And, you know, united we stand all around the world, right?
We do.
Great.
We do. Thank you, Dina. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Hopefully on Thursday nights. They're always good shows.
Good. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Kind regards. Love you.
Thank you,
God bless.
Chris.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Excellent.